I make these videos about God, and you'd think that it meant that I had some kind of great relationship with God or other. And no, I don't. Most of the time, I hate God. Most of the time, I'm talking to God about how much I think He sucks. Yeah, that's an honest statement on my part. I argue with God all the time. We have not got a good relationship. But I still make videos about what I think the truth is, and I go from there. Even though I have this adverse relationship with God, I still do things like I refuse to monetize my YouTube channel because I do talk about God. I just think it's wrong to monetize um, my relationship with God. It's not always adversarial, by the way, but I mean it largely is. Especially, I'd say the last year of my life, that it's been very adversarial. Um, and I titled this video "The Kingdom of Heaven." I want to talk about what that is historically. In the Gospels, there's quite a lot of talk about the kingdom of heaven. And I wanted to talk to you about what that is. So, Jesus was always saying, the kingdom of heaven is at hand. Repent, for the kingdom of heaven is at hand. What I think that means, if you understand what I've been talking about, Yahweh being the spirit that was breathed out into Adam to give man life, um, meaning that Adam wasn't created from clay, like, if you had a literal interpretation, but it's all symbolic. And Adam was taken from the evolutionary paradigm, such that Adam must have shown God something that made it worthwhile to God to invest his self in him. So if God thinks that he's loving and kind and all those things, that God is merciful, which, I have a lot of arguments with God about whether he's actually loving and kind and merciful and stuff like that. And I don't think he is. I think he may believe he is, but, we believe a lot of things about ourselves and our own nature, and we're often mistaken about who we are as individuals. And anyway, maybe God's kind of mistaken about who he is, and maybe he's not. Sometimes in this sort of battle, um, I do see that he's very merciful and kind and all that stuff. But then, living my own life and going through what I go through, it doesn't take me long usually to say, no, I don't really think that. Yeah. So anyway, Adam must have been this portrayal of something God uh, wanted out of man that he wasn't going to get from the others. So there he was, and God sent his spirit out onto him, and then they uh, ate from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and Yahweh, who is the spirit who was breathed out, um, couldn't hack that situation. The only way that Yahweh could deal with man was through the imposition of the law, to make man come around to his point of view, to make man have to conform. You see? that Yahweh was not able to handle a more free-form discussion with man. But the kingdom of heaven is probably about how that was going to change when the Yahweh finally was able to die with Jesus, go back to the Father, be changed, and then return at the outpouring at Pentecost. And because now we talk about the influence of the man Jesus, and then here's the influence of the man Jesus. It isn't just Yahweh anymore. It's Jesus and Yahweh as a kind of one, which we see symbolized in the book of Revelation. When we look at the Lamb is described not only as the Lamb, but having these 7 horns, which are the 7 spirits of, and all these different things that portray the identity of God in this way, that it's Jesus and Yahweh together, separate from the Father, because again in Revelation, you have the Father on the throne, and you have the Lamb coming up and giving a report. And as I had portrayed earlier in another video, Israel was the ark. Like in the Noah story, the ark that Noah built, that Israel was the ark, and so you have the law, and you have Israel, and you have, like, for instance, in the Gospel of John, how Jesus says, salvation is from the Jews, when he's talking to the woman at the well in Samaria. But that the time is coming when everyone will not worship at this mountain or that mountain, but they will worship the Father in spirit and truth. And that's what the whole idea about the kingdom of heaven is. That then when you have Yahweh coming back again, but this time one with Jesus, that it is a different kind of God who can relate to man on a free-form basis. The only problem is we have the interjection in there of the teachings of the Apostle Paul, which have kind of messed this entire thing up. Because Paul taught that you needed to believe in the sacrifice of Jesus to fulfill the law. But we have this issue that the law is really only there because that's the only way that Yahweh could deal with man, right? And Yahweh couldn't deal with man on a free-form basis. So, that can't be the truth. Paul kind of gets around to saying the ultimate conclusion is that it's about, approaching God and having a free-form basis relationship. But the very insistence that you need to have faith in the sacrifice of Jesus for your sins to be forgiven is a bogus thing to get into. That actually the truth is that God has never judged people to any kind of condemnation. That we all die and just go to heaven. There's been enough now, I'm convinced, on the near-death experience front, where since now it's possible for people to be resuscitated, and many, many, many people have come back from the dead, that they all report basically the same thing. And I've never heard any of those statements, except maybe that there's some made-up AI version where some voice you've heard on a million other YouTube videos is also talking over and relaying this story, and it's not an actual report from a person, where they said you needed to believe in the sacrifice of Jesus or you weren't going to get in. That barrier never existed for any of the people who were resuscitated and came back and made a report about what happened. Um, and in fact, you have a wide variety of people that go through that experience and come back and report about it. Atheists, people who don't or not Christians, and they all make it. In fact, I used to be a long time ago in a different life a transporter of people at a hospital, and I heard very much the same thing from a lot of people that I talked to, whoever said that they had died, but wheeling them down some hallway, and we'd be talking, and they'd say, "Oh yeah, I died once, and yeah, I did go, and and you had people who, they're adamant in their faith and stuff, but that's because they were never tested otherwise. But I also talked to a lot of people who didn't have any faith or who were atheists, and you know what? They said the same thing too. You just get in. There isn't any no to it. Um, so it's complicated. And it comes back to how Yahweh is supposed to be man's helper, you know, because God doesn't speak to people on an individual basis. God speaks to people on a communal basis. And we get that confused. I get that confused. I'm always wanting stuff for myself, right? And I don't get it, and I don't get it, and I don't get it. You know, as far as I'm concerned, the only people in religion who really are, shall we say, blessed and doing very well are shysters. You know, you get a lot of crooks and criminals and, people who are living off of your money, which I guess is why I don't monetize my YouTube channel. Because, just the whole thought of that's just creepy, you know, that I would do very well off of other people's money, um, for giving them some kind of rah message, making them feel good. That's all marketing as far as I'm concerned. And you might as well just be, talking about anything. It could be religion, it could be something else, it could be business opportunities, as far as that goes, or Amway. That's about the equivalency of most of those big time preachers who are ultra rich and fly around in jet airplanes. It's just creepy. So I'll just summarize by saying that the kingdom of heaven is just Yahweh being able to be that intermediary for man that he was intended to be, now in his unity with Jesus. And he goes about the world doing that, which, diversity, equity, and inclusivity, that's Yahweh and Jesus together doing all that. And it's you people who are under the spell of the evolutionary paradigm. Yeah, the thing about survival of the fittest and, actually anti God, if you will, because you definitely don't have loving kindness and you definitely don't have mercy. It's those people who are so opposed to that, who hate gay people, for instance. A lot of gay people are in heaven. That's where everybody goes. So, you don't, you're not right about what you think, you know, and there you are, actually opposing the movement and the presence of God and what he would like to do and how he would like to change the world. Um, I do think that since the kingdom of heaven has existed in this way, that it has been uh, open to be taken by force. That's what Jesus was trying to say in the parables where he talked about the kingdom. A lot of them he insinuated that. But that there would come a time, and eventually that time comes, and maybe it's about these kinds of revelations, like knowing the truth as a community of people, all of us together, that comes to an end. Who knows when? Um, Someone like me would like to believe that it's got to do with myself, like revealing, these messages, but maybe it doesn't at all, because how important am I? Obviously, not very important. If I were some kind of great prophet or other, then God would obviously be blessing me now, wouldn't he? And I wouldn't be talking to you from a trailer in the middle of nowhere in southern Colorado, about to run out of money, and still with my principles in hand. Is that I'm not taking it from you, you know. There you go. Um, it it's a good thing though, um, when the kingdom of heaven eventually does come round to not being taken by force. When at the end of it all, uh, that God does intervene, which that's kind of what Revelation is about. Um, yeah, I think I understand Revelation too, just like I think I understand a lot of other things. And I'm sure that, like I used to be a Christian, and I'm pretty sure that all you Christians out there are saying to yourselves, this guy, I'd like to kill him. What a load of, what a crock. Yeah, whatever. But the time is coming. The time is coming when the kingdom will no longer be taken by force, and it'll be a different thing. And maybe that time is coming soon. We'll see.